All praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. Let's get right into this lesson.
Would you be? Abram's descendants are the ones who have the right to have this land, correct? Yes. Okay. Why don't we do genetic testing on everybody in the land and find out who Abram's descendants are? It's really simple. We've cracked the human genome. We can do that. Why don't we do that? Would you be against doing that?
I have no idea what that would prove. I mean,
Really?
maybe it would be.
What do you mean? It would prove who Abram's descendants are and who has a right to live here and who doesn't, according to the theology that you yourself just explained. And so I'm very confused as to why we don't do that. If you believe the theology that you've just explained to me.
Would we do that all over the world?
Well,
and everybody
this is the
would
only country in the world that you've said has this covenant with God, that this people have a moral and legal right to the land.
But there are people who may not have bloodlines, but who have converted to Judaism. Are they going to be able to live here? Are you going to kick them out?
By your standards, they can't live here.
No,
because
I've
you just
never
told
said-
me
no,
that they have a right to live here because God gave them the land because they're the descendants of Abram.
They're the descendants of Abraham. But if they're the spiritual descendants of Abraham and they've now decided that they're converting to Judaism, then do they have a right to live in Israel?
Since you began this conversation by asking me, did I think they had a right to come here?
Yeah, that's
and
what
my question
Zionism is.
was, on what basis do they have the right?
Yeah.
And you said because God granted it to them.
And I also said because that there should be a land where Jews can live in peace and safety.
And I asked you what a Jew was, and you couldn't answer it. You
No,
said
I didn't.
it partly is religious, but doesn't have to be. It's partly genetic, but it doesn't have to be. And so that you can see why I'm confused.
I think I was very clear.
Bibi's family, we know they lived in Eastern Europe. There's no evidence they ever lived here. He's not religious.
But
in what sense?
How do we know that?
Do you have his family tree? No, we don't.
Do you?
He doesn't. So no one does. That's the point.
But
So
if
how do
there
we
is-
know that he
but
has any
if they
connection
are
to this land at
Jewish,
all?
And if there has been a practice of Judaism and a connection to the language,
But
the
he
Bible,
doesn't-
the land,
His ancestors didn't. He doesn't practice Judaism in any rigorous way. His ancestors didn't live here. They didn't speak the language, and there's no evidence they ever lived here. So in the territory that Israel controls today, particularly in the West Bank, who, through genetic testing, we can know their families have been here for thousands of years. We don't know whether they practiced Judaism, whether they were Samaritans, pre-Islam. We don't know that. A lot of them we know have been Christians for 2,000 years. They have less of a right to the land than someone whose ancestors, the only thing we know about them is they lived in Latvia or Poland. They're Eastern European. How does that work?
Right, so as you can see, Amalek, Esau is calling out Amalek, right? And it's very interesting because it says, neighbor shall be against thy neighbor, right? So you have Amalek going against his own people, right? Which is Esau, Edom, right? Amalek is Esau, Esau is Esau, right? And you have the Edomites going against Amalek. The lower tier Edomites are telling Amalek they're not the real Jews, and Amalek has no way to defend himself from that claim, because you need a court order in the first place, right? Not only do you need a court order, but a lot of Amalekites probably don't want to get a court order because they know it's gonna tell them they're not what they say they are, right? A lot of these Amalekites are straight up Edomites. Obviously, they're from Poland, they're from Latvia, they're from Germany, they're from Russia. Basically, they're straight up European, right? So you have Amalek who is on the fence now, not knowing what to do. He's being called out left and right in every direction. He can't hide up the lie no more, right? He can't disguise the lie no more. He's as many distractions as he tries to put out. The noise of the claim that the Amalekites are not the real Jews just keeps getting louder, bigger, and bolder, right? And not only do you have people calling them out, but the Bible already tells us that these Amalekites are imposters, right? Let's get our Revelation chapter 2, verse 9. I know thy works in tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich, and I know the blasphemy of them that say they are Jews and are not, but are of the synagogue of Satan, right? So, these false chosenites, right, are of the synagogue of Satan. And the thing is, with these false chosenites, they're backed up against the wall. There's no distraction, and the truth coming out that the so-called blacks, Hispanics, Native Americans, and confusion of faces are Israelites is also starting to become more accepted, more widely accepted. So everyone's starting to see Amalek for a liar. But if we start to see that Amalek is a liar, if the world starts to see that the false chosenites are not the real chosen ones, then the world will also start to see that the false chosenites are actually the Edomites. So even though you have Esau calling out Esau, eventually it's going to come back on him, because then that's going to lead to Esau finding out what his true identity is, which is not a white man, not a white woman, not a Caucasian, but an Edomite, the most despised nation out of all 18 nations, the only nation that will be destroyed by Yahweh. So let's get this out right here. Right? Actually. Exodus chapter 17, verse 16. For he said, because the Lord hath sworn that the Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. Says, right. So, ever since Amalek has been in that land, they've never had peace. They've always been at war, or they've been starting a war. Right? They've never, ever, ever had peace in that land. And even right now, from the inception of the Jewish state, there has been constant war. And now all the way to the very end, where we're at now, they're at war still. Right? They're now at war with Iran, which is the war that's going to lead to World War III. Right? Because it's going to end up turning into a regional war. Right? It says in Jeremiah chapter 30, verse 10, therefore thou not, O my servant Jacob, saith the Lord, neither be dismayed, O Israel, for lo, I will save thee from afar, and thy seed from the land of their captivity. And Jacob shall return, and shall be in rest, and be quiet, and none shall make him afraid. Right? So when the Israelites are in their land, they're going to be in peace. No nation is going to be able to make us afraid. Right? We're going to be in the top nation of that day. But Amalek, or the false chosenites, don't fit the scripture. Right? And everyone's calling the false chosenites out for this. And it's a beautiful thing to see our enemies fall. Especially Esau, Edom. And like I said, all the nations are also going to go into captivity as well. So I hope this lesson is edifying. All praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, and Shalom.